Is this me being loud? Though that's a little loud. This is maybe being loud. Okay. Dan?
Hello.
Oh my God. Jeez Louise.
That's too loud.
Yeah, yours was working.
That's too loud.
Yeah.
But now you've got your cold open.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.
Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Now, Soccer 90 is your source for all the typical stuff, U.S. national team gear, FC Dallas stuff, club gear from all over the world, but the stuff you really want to pay attention to in this moment is their exclusive brand new Dallas Tornado tee. It is great. And the new FC Dallas Kick Childhood Cancer pregame top and the Nicosi tee. That's the one that has the smiley face. Is it an emoji? I don't know what you call it. Just the smiley face thing from the social media campaign. And all of the proceeds from that go to the FC Dallas Foundation. Now, if you are a third degree, you are a third degree listener. So you're going to get 25% off your order when you use the code third degree at checkout, with the exception of the Nicosi tee, because that's a charity thing, guys. So go do all of that and check out at soccer90.com. Well, hello there, FC Dallas Curious fan. Welcome to another edition of Third Degree, the podcast. We're back to winning games, even if it's over a crappy team like Austin FC. Dallas 5, Austin 3, and Buzz and I were at the game in person. Dan, you didn't make the trip this time, did you? By the way, Dan Crook is one of our two people here with me today on the podcast.
Oh, hey, yeah. Yeah, no, their ticket prices are absurd. I'm not paying that much.
How much were they asking for tickets?
Originally, they wanted 73, and then they relented and brought it down to like 54 or something.
Okay, now was that for the supporters group that was literally in the top deck, upper reaches, as far away from the field as possible?
Yes, the supporters group that were actually in Austin, they were that far away from the field.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, my hero, and I always call him my hero and your hero, but he literally was my hero this past weekend. Me and Andy both, and we'll tell that story here in just a few seconds. Editor and founder of ThirdDegree.net, the amazing Buzz Carrick. Come in, Buzz.
Hi, Peter. Calling in today from a gas station about 35 miles north of Austin.
Yeah. So my co-host of the Kick Around, Andy, and I were decided to go to the game. A listener of the show and of the podcast had offered us his season tickets that he had purchased, and so we elected to drive down for a whole host of reasons I won't get into, but I'm glad I did. Kinda. I rented a car. We got a big Explorer. And on the way down, about 40 miles north of Austin, we experienced not one, but two flat tires on the same side of the car. We have no idea how it happened or why it happened. But Buzz, thankfully, and his wife were 40 miles away, and they came and rescued us. And we ended up getting to go to the game. And after that, there's a whole other story about the rental car company and stuff I won't bore you with, but it was a disaster. And I felt lucky to have gotten home. Anyways.
I think you buried the lead there. Just the fact that you found a rental company that has stock is incredible.
Yeah, that is true. They definitely had cars, and I'm not quite sure how I ended up with the bad luck of this one, but thank you again, Buzz. You and Amy were so kind to have gone out of your way to come get us, and we appreciate, Andy and I both very much appreciate that.
You're welcome. I certainly wasn't going to leave you stranded, but it just made for a little adventure and a fun story to tell, and I'll share the picture of the double flat tires as the intro picture for this podcast.
The episode art is the double flat tires. Still, I'm all these days later, and I'm still at a complete loss to figure out how that happened.
My
Very
favorite
strange.
part of the whole thing, Peter, was that the instructions were to leave the keys in the car and leave it there.
Yeah. Well, that's part of that's part of the story after the game, when I ended up having a confrontation with the rental company, who didn't want to rent me another car to replace the one that I had left behind at their instruction, because nobody had possession of the car, and I had left it behind with the keys in it because I was told to by the company. So, corporations are crazy. The right hand, left hand thing.
Right.
It's bonkers like that. All right, we'll talk about the experience here in a little bit because I do think that's important and interesting, and it was. I'll break it out. It was very entertaining. But Austin is absolutely a mess of a team, and after it did, well, I would say it didn't take too long to figure out this was going to be a pretty open game. And despite the game going 1-1, and then I'm not even still sure, Buzz, what happened that it just blew open, and by halftime, it was 4-1, and Dallas was beyond in control of this game.
Yeah, well, a big part of it was the press triggers Dallas was using. One of the ones that they identified basically was that Brad Stuver's not super great with his feet, so they were triggering on balls back to him. And just in general, I talked to Lucci a little bit about it today, and their idea against Austin was that you could make, as a defensive group, they wanted to make 5 defensive actions in the press. And then at that point, if they hadn't won the ball, then they would drop deep into their low block. And that early press was exceptional because they got the one goal off of it right away. Unless my brain's escaping me, there was a second goal and it could have been a third goal. And that Austin, had basically zero ability to I don't know, play out of the back, break that press. I don't even know what they were trying to do. It's like the fact that they went like 20, 25 minutes without any recognition that it wasn't working. And even after they gave up a goal, it wasn't working. And like the guy, the playing out of the back goes wrong Twitter account was already all over him before they figured out they shouldn't do that anymore. But that level, that particular game plan, like Lucci makes mistakes sometimes, but he and his staff, whoever idea it was that used this tactic early in the heat to press Austin and keep them on their heels like that, it was decisive, and it was the biggest contributor to the goals early. And that of course opened up the defense once that happened, and the Austin back line just could not handle the young forward. Was it 6 guys that were all young and active and just causing them all kinds of fits?
Yeah, we were sitting down all the way down at the end line of the Austin goal in for the first half. And in fact, the Stuver goal that you're talking about, the opening goal of the game, I missed because it was a goal kick. And, you think to yourself, oh, it's a goal kick. What could I possibly miss so I could look down at my phone and respond to a text or tweet something? Like, I'm not going to miss anything. And before I knew it, I heard all the Austin fans around me cussing and screaming and having a conniption. And by the way, you can say what you want about the Austin fans. They are very, very clear on the fact that their team is terrible. They all know it, and they all have identified it. But what was amazing was as Wolf's team blew that situation and then continued to try to play out of the back and continued to put their team in a really precarious position after precarious position. There was some real anger in the stands. There was one guy, I was convinced he was going to jump out of the stands, go and clear the lines himself. He was crazy upset about it. And it was a really weird thing to watch, and I'm pretty sure there needs to be a law that expansion clubs are not allowed to play out of the back. That should just be a rule.
Yeah, the funny thing about missing the goal, because you look down on the goal kick, is that the broadcast did the same thing. Now, usually goal kicks are a relatively safe time. There's actually instructions from the league that's when you should do things, generally speaking. But apparently the broadcast, obviously I wasn't watching because I was in the stands, but I saw referenced on Twitter that they missed it. So, it's rough when that happens, of course. It's no one wants that to happen. But literally half the stadium got caught off guard by that goal. It was ridiculous how quick Dallas pounced on it and how wide open it was.
Yeah, and then it just seemed from that point on, Dallas kind of figured out how to take control of the game, and there was nothing Austin seemingly could do about it. Now, Austin did have a couple of opportunities in the first half. And they were, in fact, even early in the game, I thought Austin really came out pretty sharp for up until the goal happened. That was pretty much an even game. It was wide open the entire time, though.
Yeah, and I'm sure Dan would agree with me. Philippe actually made a couple of really big saves early on, that kept it. I don't remember exactly when they were. It either kept it at 0 or it kept it, 1-0 or whatever, and kept Austin from keeping themselves in the game. And then he did the same thing late. He was a big part of the result, even though he gave up 3 goals in the end because of the 15-minute letdown Dallas had in the second half. But Felipe early and late was really strong.
Yeah, Felipe came out with a couple of really solid. I mean, there was a couple of one-on-one chances, header on the 6-yard line, an advancing run. Just really need him to stop the Brazilian. Let me turn everyone and just and then just hoof the ball upfield. Just get it upfield, get it out to someone.
Always got to have a skill check in there if you're a Brazilian goalkeeper. Got to keep everybody on their toes. I think the other part of this, the story of the game, speaking of buried leads, was the starting lineup for Dallas and Lucci's decision to start a midfield 3 that, for many of us, is almost a culmination of a longstanding kind of running joke or dream, depending how you look at it. That is, starting 3 center midfielders were all homegrowns. And Cervania got kind of a surprise start. Were you surprised to see that, Buzz?
I was very surprised because it's not what they did in training as of even as late as Wednesday. Now, over the past couple of weeks, Lucci has twice told me that Cervania was really close. So, in hindsight, maybe he was trying to tell me something, but they worked with Ricarte as the first choice in training the days that I was there. And I think very, very highly of Ricarte, and a lot of the stats agree with me. Obviously, he's way down on Lucci's list for whatever reason, but Cervania played terrific soccer. And if you will put your brain into dream mode for just a minute and take Hader Obrian out of the thing and put in your boy Paxton, then that front 6 with Pepe, Jesus, Shun, Paxton, Cervania, and Cerrillo, man, that's exciting. I mean, it's all but one homegrown, and the one young guy is, I mean, I have no idea if he's a young DP or whatever he is, but he's an exciting young 21-year-old too. That front 6 is just astoundingly fun, and I'm hoping we'll see more of it now that Paxton's back.
Yeah, that was the real clear thing, is that by the time it was 4-1 at halftime, it did become it just started to dawn on me of who was accomplishing this. Again, they're doing it against an expansion side that is morbid at best, but even then, that's still an accomplishment for an MLS club to field that kind of level of homegrowns and achieve that, kind of have a 4-1 lead at that point. That was really something to think about and soak in.
Yeah, I mean, some of those guys in the midfield from their side are some of their best players. You got Ring in there, you got Fagundes in there, you got their DPs are in there. I didn't look at their exact starting lineup, but one of their DPs is up front, but another one was in the midfield. So when you have, Cervania and Cerrillo and the way Dallas plays it, Jesus is really that higher off striker, which in this game in particular, he was really good at that, being that second striker and not in the midfield. But Cerrillo was Cerrillo, and so Cervania really for me was like this box-to-box linking guy, playing defense and offense both, and he was the glue for the whole thing, and he was phenomenal.
Yeah, Dan, can we believe that we can even say at this point that Hader Obrian had a good game in Austin?
Yeah, I kind of felt funny about that one. I mean, don't get me wrong. He had Houston. He was a great sub. Came in and did the defensive work that Vargas wasn't. But yeah, you need that pace option, particularly with that high press. And he has shown in little spurts that pressing is one of his talents. He thinks finishing 1-on-1 is. It isn't. And, he should have had a goal in the second minute on that first cut down a goal kick when Pepe or Jesus dispossessed the defender. Stole the ball right off the keeper's feet, and then no, that was the second one. Either way, he forced the corner, but that should have been the first goal really, if it was really anyone but Hader.
And Shun had one too. I mean, it could have been 5-6 at half, honestly.
Well, I think by the time we're done telling this story, we're all going to lament the fact that it probably should have been 8-3, if not 9-3, based on all the really good opportunities, and some of them just easy opportunities they just flat out missed. Different people did.
Yeah, look, when you have, 20, 22 shots, something like that on the road, I mean, that's an astounding amount of shot ratio. It's 20, and 7 shots on goal. I mean, that's ridiculous output. their team had to come up with blocks and had to come up with saves in order to keep it even at 5. This is about as steamrolling as we've seen in many years. And it's on the road. I mean, how bad is this team on the road? And then to do this on the road is astounding.
Well, again, let's all curb this with the reminder that it was Austin, and I have a feeling by the time the season ends, Austin's not going to get any better. Dallas very much could play a lot better and end up continuing to climb the charts. I think Austin is, it's an expansion club. They got a lot of other things going for them on the field, just isn't it at this particular moment.
Well, true, but their defense has been one of their stronger sides. It's, their offense is terrible, having only scored 20 goals. They're the worst offense in the league. Their defense is not horrible. And that's what Dallas
Sunday.
was skunking.
Oh.
Yeah, right. That's
I mean,
what I'm saying.
they wouldn't get tight on anybody. They weren't getting in. It was really strange. It was almost as if they were all worried that they were just going to get beaten or for pace or turned or something. The one big takeaway, and Buzz, you and I talked about this as you were chauffeuring us around Sunday night, was it was the change. There has been a noticeable change in swagger with Ricardo Pepi. And I'm sure a lot of this has to do with the new contract. I'm sure it has to do with getting the whole thing off his shoulders in terms of what national team he's going to play for, and the fact that he got the call up, and all the other things that are going on in his life right now. But in Austin Sunday night, I saw a new level of ownership of his game and trying to be a leader that I hadn't seen out of him previously.
Yeah, he's a kid who. I compared him sort of jokingly to Nuke Lelouch from Bull Durham. Not that he's a dummy, but just the sense that he does not have self-doubt. He's every time you've ever talked to him or watched him, how he carries himself, or watched him take on every challenge they've put in front of him, he always assumes he's going to do it. And he's always mad that he doesn't do it. Like the audacity of that silly 25 in 2021 hashtag that he was throwing around last Christmas or whatever it was. I mean, the audacity to predict you're going to score 25 goals or that's your goal when you're not even the starter. I mean, that just shows you the mentality the kid has. And it's now starting to manifest itself in a swagger on the field because he now knows that there's basically nobody in MLS like one-on-one that can handle him, and when he and Jesus are playing together and playing in a positive way, and you have Schoen out there and you have Paxton out there, or in this case, Obrian, who's also occupying defenders with his pace. Those guys all make you play disciplined defense because if you give up on them, they'll burn you like Schoen did like multiple times down the wing. So Pepe's getting these one-on-one defenders, and he knows that no one can keep up with him on that. So he's an 18-year-old kid. So right now he's got a swagger, and I think we should all enjoy it for what it is. Lucci actually does a really good job of keeping him in check. There's times when it's necessary to, bust that bubble just a little bit, like you have to do with all young, really talented players. And so far, Lucci's done a terrific job managing him. So hopefully we'll continue to see it go. I'm sure, Dan, you've seen more than your fair share of young starlet players that have gotten the big head and not produced down the line.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just laughing that you called Pepe a charter.
Yeah. Oh, did I? I didn't mean to call him a charter.
No, absolutely. He's at that. I mean, it's crazy. He's an 18-year-old, and you get it. You've spent enough time around youth soccer. Your people don't quite understand that growth spurts are still happening at that age, and girls come around, and partying comes around, and all these other things that take people's minds away from the game, and or physically take them away from the game, and just watching the growth of it and him now, and the continued growth since really. He came up to Frisco at 14 it's incredible. And he is now turning a corner, taking it to that next level. And you mentioned the 25 in 21. Well, he's nearly halfway there, and we're not halfway through the season just yet. Actually, yeah, we are. Obviously.
Yeah, just over halfway.
Yeah. If he gets on a real good run, it could actually happen. I mean, just the fact that you get a bit excited at FC Dallas anytime you get double figures on the season because it doesn't happen all that often here anymore. And to your point as well about him pissed off about things not quite happening. He was visibly angry at coming off and not getting that hat trick that he should have had.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. Is Pepe the earliest Dallas player, and if not the earliest ever, when was the last time somebody in a Dallas jersey had hit for 10 at this point of the season?
Oh, at this point of the season, wow. The last 10-goal scorer was Urruti in 2017. So you'd probably have to...
And he was only like at 11
12,
or 12,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, you'd have to go back to like whichever one was the later one, Cooper or Cunningham, when they had the back-to-back, I think it was 17, 18-goal seasons. But even then, I'd have to go back and look it up game by game to give you that kind of information. But it's one of those two guys is the last time. And no one's ever hit 20 here. So, he's sitting on 11. He's got, 13 games to play?
Yeah.
So 20 is probably not likely, but he's got a good shot to be over 15. And I think that's only happened like 4 times. I should look that up. That's a good thing to figure out.
And several people have pointed this out, and he certainly was deserving of the accolades and the man of the match. But we did see another level from Jesus Ferreira on Sunday night, and because Pepe's getting a lot of the press for all the obvious reasons, but Ferreira really started to put some stuff together, and he took advantage of a lot of opportunities to place his stamp on the game in Austin.
Oh man, yeah. The last 2 games from Jesus have been phenomenal. The Houston game in the second half was phenomenal because the first half he was bad when he was compensating for Vargas. But when they get him in the right spot, which is what they did against Austin, and he's higher in that hole underneath Pepe. Pepe's occupying the center backs, Schoon's occupying one side, Hadir the other. If the holding mids from the other team are not actively pursuing Jesus and paying attention to him as he sneaks in behind him, he has a field day. And he's done these last 1.5 games now. He's been on fire, and I think it's his best soccer of the season, happening at the same time some of Pepe's is too. And that's why you're getting this offensive explosion basically over the last 2 games.
What do you think? How do you attribute that? Like, what has changed? Is it something tactically? Is it all mental? Is it just form? What is it that's got Jesus playing better?
It's probably a lot of things. We talk about it a lot on here, and I know that Lucci talks to him about it, and he can tell as well as anybody, the kid can, when he's out of position and having to come back for the ball and having to come back and cover up for Vargas or whatever, he's out of the game and nothing happens and the team falls apart. So a lot of times it's just repetition. Jesus is young too. We forget that he's barely not a teenager. So he's still learning the game all the time, and he's learning how to play this role. And so is the team around him. It's like they've only played a very limited number of games with this current group of really young guys up front. Paxton's been missing, or Schoon was missing for the Euros or whatever. And so it's just all takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, and we're just past the midpoint of this season. So it's when you would expect things to really be firing on all cylinders offensively, and you're basically seeing it from him.
We also got a really nice performance out of Schoon, who will, as you said, Buzz, leave and go join his national team here shortly, if he hasn't already. Really nice, explosive game. They really had trouble. Lima had trouble keeping up with him and guarding him all night long.
Yeah, he's particularly good at how to describe this, at recognizing the gap with that, when he's coming from wide and he's making that outside back sort of handle him. One of the things he likes to do is when he's flip-flop sides, really on either side, is come inside and make the other center back react to him. And if the center back reacts, then there's a gap for Pepe, or if he doesn't react, then there's a gap for Jesus over him. And so he's really playing with a ton of confidence. I particularly in that game enjoyed the way that he baited the opposition player who had grabbed him a couple of times, and then he grabbed him back and got a card for us. So then he proceeded to bait the guy like 3 times to grab him and get more fouls drawn. So he's a savvy kid who plays at a very high level for a guy that young.
Just wish
he's
he'd
also
eat
a little
more
wind-up
barbecue.
merchant, isn't he?
Yeah.
He was yeah, like you say, he was baiting Lima something crazy. When they kept catching it on the camera, he's grinning at him and mouthing, shut the F up, and and it was like that that's the kind of, Lucci talks about, you need that horrible bastard in your team, and suddenly you've got two of them.
And is the other one now the sweetest gif I've seen of a player from Dallas in quite a long time, which was Edwin Cerrillo's rather rude knock of the ball out of the hand after Austin had scored the goal. Is that what you're referring to, Dan?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you don't have a right to run the ball back. It's just,
There's so much in that, 3-second GIF to discuss, but without question, the best part of it is the smile that breaks across his face when he recognizes that mission accomplished.
Absolutely, and Alex Ring is, he's a pro. He was one of the leading players on New York City when they were good. Let alone being the one, the one good midfielder on a terrible team now. I mean, so yeah, if you can wind him up, you've kind of got the whole team in your pocket at that point.
Yeah, with Surreal, you can go back to what we talked about him with the winter, right? Winter, when we were talking about is he ready or not. This was the missing piece. Was the nastiness. Now you don't have to be a bad person, but on the field you have to have this nastiness. We've talked about it with every great holding mid that Dallas has had. The Daniel Hernandez, the Grezzo, the
Leonel Alvarez.
Leonel Alvarez.
The king.
Simo Valakari had it on the field. Oscar had it on the field, even though he wasn't always a six. He was late in his career. Those Chad Deering, those guys have a nasty streak on the field. And Edwin has not shown that in Major League Soccer. He lacked a certain amount of confidence in Major League Soccer. He had that in the academy, and we've seen it with North Texas when he's gotten a red card or two from getting nasty in North Texas, but he lacked the confidence. Well, now he has the confidence, and so now it's coming out. He knows occasionally he has to hit somebody hard. He knows occasionally he has to take a professional foul and draw a yellow card in order to stop the play at the right time. And now he has this gamesmanship too where, listen, all those young kids are feeding off each other. That's part of it too. They know that they can play, and they know that that group together can do some good things. And that kind of gamesmanship from Edwin, it's symbolized by that moment when he knocks the ball out of the guy's hand. But it's prevalent in other parts of his game too. It's not just that one.
It's almost like, just in his mind, he's hit that point where he's like, I'm not a young guy that's playing up in MLS. I'm a young MLS player. And that he's got that, like you say, that confidence that, he's kind of been bossing the midfield and he's, got the Billy Big Spuds energy going on.
All right. So the other thing I want to talk about as we get back to the back line is as I was sitting in the stands, and again, we were sitting down in a group of season ticket holders, Austin season ticket holders. We were the only Dallas fans in the section. And, it was very clear to me that there was a large faction of them that were all relatively new to the game. They didn't know the nuances of the game. And you can always tell that by people who refer to it as offsides. They don't know the proper term, or
Lucci
they get
That's
drives
funny.
me nuts. And you can also tell just by the way they react to certain plays, things they get excited about or don't get excited about, etc. But there was also a group of them that did know the game, and they knew it quite well. And no matter whichever group of these people it was, there was a universal commenting about Nkosi Tafari. Everybody noticed Nkosi Tafari and how good, especially in the second half, because in the second half Austin is shooting at the Dallas goal, literally just yards away from where we're all sitting, and everybody was asking, like, who is that guy? Oh my God, that guy's amazing. And he did have an outstanding game. As the game kind of fell apart and became wide open and crazy, I'm telling you, I don't think I'm going too far to say that Nkosi is outplaying Matt Hedges, and it's not even close.
I'm not going to go so far as to say not even close, but he's 100% for sure outplaying Matt Hedges. He's the best defender on this team right now, for sure. And I don't think it's a massive gap, but it is definitely a gap. The thing that is so noticeable, and you can see it in training too, it was clearly noticeable today, is that he has a burst over about 15 to 20 yards and can cover that ground so quickly that when balls bounce loose or balls are getting crossed in, that you think, oh man, that's going to be a problem. And no one's going to get to that. And all of a sudden he's there and he's cleaning it up and clearing it out. And it's remarkable. And it finally struck me today. I've been trying to draw in my head a comparison to like who he reminds me of. And I always go to FC Dallas history for my comparisons. And it finally hit me that the body control, the long legs, the range, the physicality, the aggressive mentality, the work rate, the whole thing is, for me, Ryan Suarez.
Interesting. You know who I was going to say he reminds me of is Eddie Pope.
Sure, but I went Dallas. Yeah, totally.
Okay.
I buy Eddie Pope, and because you can early Ryan Suarez before he lost it mentally. I think he just decided he didn't enjoy the professional life more than anything. It's not like he became a bad player, but early Ryan Suarez to me looks like early Eddie Pope. So I totally buy that analogy. He's got everything in the game you need to be a terrific, fantastic pro in this league, and maybe even higher, but for sure in this league for a long time, as long as he maintains the mentality that he has right now. And all signs are that he's gonna. And there's a certain amount of, for me, in this season in particular, they're at a point now where the chances that even if you make the playoffs, which you have a legit chance to if you continue to do what you're doing, even if you make it though, you're not going to win anything. Let's not be stupid. So like, there's a value at this point, I think, for me to play the guys, it's almost exclusively that are going to be the building blocks for the future. Absolutely, Nicosia is one of those guys and should be the lock starter the rest of the way. No matter who else gets healthy, he should start no matter what.
Yeah, I don't want to discount Matt because I love Matt and consider him a club legend. But the age difference and the speed difference that you reference is so clear on the field. This is the closest I had sat down near the field and seen them all in action in quite some time. And his level of calmness is Matt Hedges like, but his, as you say, his quickness and speed and recognition of the game is just improving every time I see him, and it's quite impressive. And really, the best part of his game is he always seems to be where he needs to be to head a ball clear out of the box when things are getting crossed in. No matter where it is, I don't know how he does it. It's just really impressive. And again, I've said this 1,000 times on this podcast. He's easily the best story of the season.
And hey, we have that story on the blog.
Oh, yes. Don't forget to read Dan's story about Nkosi Tafari at thirddegree.net.
No, he's definitely, he's got the mental side of the game down to the point where, Lucci said a few times that they were surprised how well he's come on with that. And, and his physicality is just incredible. Like you say, he's under everything. It's like, they were chipping balls into the near post and somehow he's on it, but he's at the far post. He's on the... he's on the penalty spot. I don't know if if it was a case of he's man marking, they're varying their runs that much, or Nkosi really is tracking absolutely everything. But the numbers look fantastic with Nkosi and Matt in the back because they're both clearance machines.
Yeah, Hedges is at the point at 31 where his physical tools are going to start to decline. And maybe they already have, perhaps. He was injured a lot earlier this year, but he's not going to have the physical game that Nkosi is going to have going forward. Hedges, however, has the experience, has the wisdom of the game, and has been there in this league forever. That's a great combination. The leader, the experience, and the young guy with the range. That's the kind of defense that you can sort of build around going forward, and hopefully that's going to be, for another year or two, at least, if Hedges can keep it up, that'll be some of the first choice guys here.
Honestly, it's the blueprint is the double win in season, because you had Hedges kind of being the, stay back, get under everything, cover, and then you've got the more aggressive, younger, athletic centre back in Walker Zimmerman. Now you've got that in Nkosi Tafari, plus you've got Matt with a couple of years extra experience now.
Buzz, typically after a game, we all like to sit around and dissect Lucci's substitutions. I was wondering if you had any particular reaction or thought about how he managed that part of the game, especially when everything, like the wheels started flying off and suddenly we went from, 4-1 to 4-2, the 5-2 to 5. The whole thing just started getting really weird.
Well, I think he was hampered a little bit by the cramping players, and he had to make a couple adjustments for that. But overall, I thought it was actually okay. The adjustment at the end to bring on an extra defender, that's something I've been ripping him for, is like the idea that you have to stay loyal to your shape. And when you don't, you can bring on an extra guy and end up with 5 at the back. You end up sort of was it like a 5-4-1 kind of look, or a 5,
something,
5-4-1, sort of like a low block as well.
Yeah, particularly because where the way Austin was having a lot of joy was because Dallas was becoming more and more compact as their guys were sort of cramping up and getting, so the defense as a whole was getting tighter. They weren't spreading the field as much. So Austin was getting a lot of hay wide and then coming inside from the wide positions. You bring on the extra defender, and all of a sudden you've got Munjoma out there as an extra outside back, and so you have your tight back 4 in the cross with the extra guy, and that cleans up those wide spaces a lot. And that was kind of what closed it down in the end. And he brought in a couple of guys that had the ability to really run. Like you weren't going to be able to run with Hara up top, but Elmed Carr can do that a fair bit. Che's got some ability to get up and down. Majoma's got some ability to get up and down. Chuamasi was still on there. They moved him a little higher so he could use his ability to get up and down. So they had guys out there that could counter a little bit and cover up for Hara a little bit. And full credit to Franco Hara for getting out there and scrapping. He had that incredibly cheeky goal that turned out to be offsides that I was giggling in my hand, trying not to get in trouble with the fans around me laughing at that. But just doing a good job eating up game time and eating up center backs and keeping people distracted. I actually thought it was a relatively good set of substitutions. I didn't have any complaints about it.
I really liked when they brought in Tumasi. You mentioned, brought in Minjama, and you mentioned Tumasi playing up a little higher. He was fantastic when he went into centre mid, and it's not something we've really seen too much out of him. I mean, traditionally a winger that's been converted to a fullback.
Yeah, every time over the last 2 months that I've had a conversation with Vellucci about who could play in the middle if this happened or that happened, he always brings up Tuamasi as a linking 8 type player. He's 100% is in Lucci's playbook to do that. We finally saw that a little bit in this game, and there was a little bit too where he was playing wide in midfield some, and he certainly is obviously an option to play even as a right wing. If O'Brien were to get suspended or something and Paxton was still hurt, I mean, you could still use him as a wing too. So.
Well, the other comment I'll make about the on-field stuff is we talk a lot about Lucci being an inexperienced, relatively new manager and his habit of standing on the sideline and just constantly yelling at the players and coaching and directing. And lo and behold, looking down the sideline at Austin Sunday night, who else was standing on the sideline doing almost exactly the same thing, but equally young and inexperienced? Josh Wolf. And that was really cinched it for me, is that's the difference between guys that are learning the job, right?
Yeah.
And not comfortable in that they got everybody doing what they want them to do, and somebody like a Bruce Arena or a Bob Bradley that just do a very minimal amount of that over the course of 90 minutes.
Yeah, I think there's probably a component, too, of how veteran your team is, how settled your team is, how well they play the system you want to play. I mean, I remember finding it remarkable watching some of the best coaches in the EPL, like Alex Ferguson. I remember having and maybe I'm totally delusional that it was him, but having just like a little pad and just jotting down like a couple of little notes and hardly saying anything other than when he was subbing a guy in. Then he's going to give him some instructions. But, the coaches got to learn too, They have to learn just like players have to learn. And we've been talking forever about how Lucci's learning all the time. I keep hoping that he'll stop talking as much, but he also has got 5 or 6 guys on his team that are making mental mistakes at a relatively high rate just because they're still learning to play certain positions. It's not massive mistakes, but it's not, there's still moments of which like, that's not right. Come on. And they still every day work on tactics and training, and every day they work on concepts. It's just, these are a really young team that's playing. And some of those guys, even like when Shea's out there, it's like the guys hardly knows where to be at all. So, I don't blame Lucci for it, but I do wish he would shut up and sit down a lot more than he does, because it is annoying. And I'm sure it's annoying for the players. I mean, I used to hate it when it was scrub wreck butt would be playing on the same side as a coach. It wouldn't shut up. I used to hate it too.
So, Buzz, Saturday night, the club has to travel out to Salt Lake to face that team, which is, by the way, this is always the worst time to face a team when they're on their first game back since firing their coach. And, that always seems to work well for a result for the new coach. I am interested because you did tweet out a video earlier today after being at practice that you had some Paxton news. Is it possible that in Salt Lake we will have, how many, 5 homegrowns in the front line in Salt Lake Saturday night?
It's possible. But first, let's remind everybody that Salt Lake didn't fire their coach. He quit to become an assistant for Seattle.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I'm telling the story wrong.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing thing that he was a head coach at Salt Lake and left to go be an assistant at Seattle. Just tells you where Seattle RSL's franchise is right now with their whole ownership. And, the guy obviously was like, I got to get out of here. But Mastroeni will be their coach. Yeah, so here's the deal on Paxton. Paxton is back in training. He looks phenomenal, by the way. Super bright and active. I don't see any signs of any injury at all. Last time when he came back, he was still gimping around. Not today. He looked phenomenal. And you'll like this Peter story. At the end of the practice, he came over and I was chatting with him. And I said, how you feeling? And he said, I feel good. And I said, okay, is that Paxton feel good or do you actually feel good? And he laughed. He's like, oh, no, I actually really feel good this time. So he knew exactly what I meant about saying that he's good even when he's not. So he is good, and he is ready to go, and it looks, based on what I witnessed, it looks like he's going to be the guy. Shun is gone, Acosta's gone, and Vargas is gone. So that doesn't leave you a whole lot of choices. Oh, Pepe's gone also.
Thank God Vargas is gone.
Yeah, so Vargas is out of the mix, because he could have been an option. So Franco Jara for Pepe is obvious, right? I mean, I wish it wasn't, but it is. So Jesus is still here. So that'll be the same. Pamlico back in on the left. That's easy, right? O'Brien on the right, because you don't have Shun, you don't have Vargas, you don't have. I mean, Khalil's not really ready for 90 yet, so those two guys are obvious. And I think when you win 5-3, that pretty much everyone's going to stay that can stay. So that means Cervania, who was fantastic, and Cirio will stay. Faco trained. He does look like he could go, but I don't think that they will force that given the fact that Cervania did so well. And then the back, of course, will be Hedges, Hollingshead, Tafari, I got to get that right, Tuamasi, and Philippe. Jimmy Maurer participated today, but he did not participate 100%. So again,
what's his injury? I forgot.
Oh man, I don't even remember what it is. It's the same thing he's had a problem with for a while now.
It was a quad, I think.
Yeah, I want to say it's just some tightness. So like if he had to play tomorrow, like if it was a playoff game, I'm sure he could play because he trained on it, and last week he was jogging on it. I think it's just they're just being precautious. And Felipe was really getting close to challenging anyway, and they probably wanted to give him some playing time. He wasn't going to beat Maurer out because Maurer's got some leadership qualities that Felipe doesn't have, but. I think they're okay with giving Jimmy a couple of games off and giving Felipe some games. And he was great. So I don't have any complaints about him being in there. So that's what you're going to see. That's your 11. I would anticipate. I don't think Faco. There's no reason to rush back Faco or Maurer. And Paxton is ready, and he looked phenomenal today. Oh, man,
well,
that's good.
We're now 4 games deep, what will then be 4 games deep into this road, this hellish schedule with a lot of road games, the third one in a row for Dallas. And, okay, the first 2 come against the other crummy teams in Texas. Salt Lake isn't outstanding, but they are on the top end. Let's just put it this way. They're on the plus side of the playoff schedule. This will be an interesting opportunity for Dallas to kind of prove where they're really at.
Yeah, listen, we talked about this stretch coming in, this 6 of 7. We've been talking about this for months, and they got a win and a tie in the first 2 games against bad teams. And right before this started, we mentioned those 2 games. We mentioned the second game against Houston and the game against Vancouver coming up. Those are you really need to make your points if you were going to get any. And if that happened, then you could have a little less pressure in Salt Lake, which they now is the case. And you have a San Jose home game coming up. And then you have a little less pressure going to New York. That's a tough road trip no matter what. So RSL, having traded their coach, maybe not traded, excuse me. They kind of traded him. They let him go for nothing. Maybe they won't get like that fired coach bounce. Maybe they'll just get like a what is going on around here collapse because they don't have an owner. Their coach just walked out on them. it's a kind of a mess of a situation. They give up a fair amount of goals. So, I actually, given the way Dallas is playing on the road these last 2 games, I can't believe this. They actually feel like there's a real opportunity to go. I mean, they're usually terrible in Salt Lake, usually historically terrible in Salt Lake. But, man, all of a sudden, it's like this team's actually decent on the road. And everyone's missing pieces for call-ups, so you never know what you're going to get, out of these teams on these games. But, with the way Tafari's playing, the way Hedges is playing, the way the back line's holding together, so Cervania and Surreal last game, I mean, you got to feel like you like the direction things are heading. Not a good team yet, but you like the direction it's heading.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Anything else about the Austin game or previewing the Salt Lake game before we move into talking about the experience since we were down there?
Well, let's see. Brisson is still out. He's got at least another week or 2 to go, so he's not even available on the bench. Martinez looks fine in training. They brought up a couple of North Texas guys today. This is slightly off topic, but Antonio Carrera, basically since the new academy season rolled around, he's basically been in first team training every single day with the first team and not with the academy anymore. Not even with North Texas anymore. He's been in with SC Dallas every single day, which is amazing. I'm still predicting he'll probably be a homegrown signing this winter. They brought up the kid, Kaiser Gomez, who's the center back, the extra center back. They brought up Smith, Colin Smith, who still needs a lot of work. Nicky Hernandez, they brought back in from North Texas training, who's one of their players. And it's amazing. The guy that they brought in today that looked the best out of all those dudes was actually Gibran Rayo, who is playing the best of his career for North Texas. He's been their best player all year, in and out.
What's his last name?
Rayo, R-A-Y-O, Gibran
okay.
Rayo. Yeah. So, honestly, like right now, like you'd have to sign him to a deal, and you can't really do it. It's all complicated. But right now, like if I needed a guy on the wing, I mean, I'd rather have him than a whole handful of dudes, and a couple of dudes are even on this team, which is remarkable. And I hope that guy gets a chance eventually. So, all right, that's all I really had before we did the atmosphere stuff.
Okay. Dan, anything you want to throw in there?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a little bit quiet in case you two hadn't noticed. I was running the numbers on Pepe, comparing him to Kenny Cooper in 2008, Jeff Cunningham in 2009. He just falls short of both. Jeff Cunningham, 2009, took 1,219 minutes to hit his 10th goal in the 23rd game of the season, 2-2 draw against DC United. Pepe, on the other hand, did it in a fewer games, 22, but it was 1,330 minutes. Cooper actually did it in 18 games, although he was playing 90s for most of it, so it was like 1,533.
Cooper was at training today. There you go.
Yeah, those numbers. He's not a million miles from that pace.
It's a remarkable season, and Kenny, at that point, was that Kenny's first or second stint? That was his first stint.
That was his first stint,
his first stint. And, man, sometimes we forget about how good he was and just got frustrated about how good he really could have been if he just played the position that he was built to play and not the one he wanted to play.
Yeah, and if he'd have stuck around, maybe, like the places he went when he went back overseas after that stint, it never really worked out. He didn't really get much of a look, to be honest. So if he'd have stayed here and banged in, 3 or 4 more seasons at that rate, we might be talking him as one of the all-time greats of this franchise. I mean, he's still up there, but, it was a shame that he left, in my opinion.
We can always have a debate another day. Who's a better right winger, Hideo O'Brien or Kenny Cooper?
Oh, wow.
Well, it is definitely Kenny Cooper. Well, I don't know. O'Brien won some brownie points over the weekend, or at least in the last game and a half.
Did he make you brownies? That's nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the atmosphere, because I was excited to travel down and see this amazing, kick-ass, world-class stadium that everybody had been telling me about that they had built somewhere north of downtown Austin. And I'm not from Austin. I've spent time in Austin, but I don't consider myself super familiar with the place. And if I am familiar with it, it's mostly confined to the downtown area since that's where all the events really generally are and stuff. Buzz, I don't know. The best analogy I could make for people when they asked me about it in terms of its location is it would almost be like dropping a 20,000 seat stadium in Addison, Texas.
Yeah, Addison's a good shout. I was thinking like Mockingbird Station kind of area.
See, I think that's way too south. I think it's way north. Oh, yeah. It's definitely much further north from downtown than Mockingbird Station is.
That's the thing about the picture that I posted, right? Where you can actually see downtown from the stadium. So that's why I was like North Park Mall, that kind of distance. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that.
So I'm talking about the Galleria Addison area, and you can see downtown.
As a former Addison resident, you can definitely see downtown.
Oh, can you? Oh, yeah. Then Addison's the perfect analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. The domain area, you're probably looking at a similar drive as Addison downtown.
Yeah, and I totally buy it. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but it's certainly not the urban core area that everybody thinks stadiums should be in. And I know it's near a train stop, and there really isn't that in Addison. But just in terms of They're
actually building one.
Oh, okay.
Unfortunately, it won't link to Frisco because Frisco doesn't want Dallas County people to ever be there.
What?
So I guess my question is, Dan, because I make the comparison to Addison, and I worry that people go, "Oh, dude, that would be cool." I'm just asking everybody to really think about Addison with a giant 20,000 seat stadium in it, and the congestion, and the lack of parking, and all of that, because that was my big takeaway from being there. Was that I know everybody loves walking to the game, but we were staying at a hotel less than a mile away, and it appeared it was like ants traveling to a picnic or something. And it was hot, and it wasn't easy to get to. And I don't know, it just seemed like a really weird place for a soccer stadium to me.
Well, I don't. Dan's not seen it, so
I don't mean it. It just was weird in the sense that, look, in downtown Houston, it's like this urban core, and there's another stadium on the other side, and there's all these places to hang out and do this stuff. In Frisco, there's a lot of parking lots, and there's the other fields, and there's this ever-growing presence of retail and restaurants around it. This place is much like its location in relationship to its downtown. It's kind of the middle ground between what Frisco is to downtown Dallas and that atmosphere, and what Houston is to its downtown and its atmosphere. That's the best way I can explain it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair description. Whether you like it or not, it's probably just depends on your cup of tea. I mean, I really enjoyed it. But then again, I didn't try to drive to it. I mean, like I said, I parked at your hotel. So right. I wasn't scrambling for parking or whatever. I definitely feel like it's a place, and I feel this is true of Houston too. And to be fair, it's the way I do Frisco, which is I go up there way early and like go to a restaurant. I think this place would benefit from that too, just like you would from Houston. I like it when there's stuff around the stadium. So, it kind of parallels to the picture that I posted of the downtown. I legitimately posted that picture without any context to the post because I thought of it as, oh my gosh, look, you can actually see downtown.
And people thought you were dogging them.
And people thought I was dogging them and ripping them, which is one reason why I intentionally didn't put any context, because I wanted to see what people would say. But that was my actual thinking was, you really can't see downtown. It really is vaguely in the city. Wow. Because listen, I hate the fact that FC Dallas is in Frisco. I'm also aware of how the world works, and I know that there are plenty of people in Frisco. And that when you claim that no one goes because it's in Frisco, you're being ridiculous, and you're giving the team an out. They need to be better at what they do. There's no one at the games because they stink at marketing and selling the team, not because there's not enough people. There's plenty of people. I'd rather be downtown, sure, obviously, of course. So, this stadium, I thoroughly enjoyed the walk up. I enjoyed all the fans coming out of the whatever bars and restaurants there were. There's still some area around there that can be developed. I was thinking, man, if I lived in Austin, I totally would get an apartment right there across the street.
The problem that they may have is, where they picked right off the domain, it would be like building a stadium, like a quarter mile away from the shops at Legacy. there's so much stuff there that no one's going to build anything in between it of substance because it's that close. You're kind of diluting the market.
Yeah, I will say that's the weird thing. And again, maybe I missed it because I didn't walk all the way around. It just doesn't feel like there's a ton of places to eat and hang out. There's a couple of breweries a few blocks away that were quite lively and had things going on. But I feel like there's a way more places to eat in the immediate vicinity of Frisco and Houston Stadium than there is the Austin Stadium. But again, maybe I missed it. But at least on my walk, like we ended up having to eat at a restaurant right by our hotel, which was just kind of a fast food sit-down restaurant. It wasn't like a table service kind of place.
Well, it is new. Remember, when Frisco started, there was nothing.
Sure,
So
yeah.
I think, I give it a couple of years. Maybe it'll fill in a little bit.
Yeah,
We'll see,
for sure. All right, so I don't know. I think probably the next thing is just the stadium, talking about the stadium. It's cool, and I was fascinated to see the stadium for the first time because I'd seen a lot of pictures. But a lot of the questions that I had about the design of the stadium were confirmed for me by going in it, which is I find the design of the stadium really unusual and questionable. I admit freely this is subjective in every single way. But the roof, for everybody that's got roof envy, I'm just telling you, it definitely has its pros, but in my mind, it also has its cons. And in this particular instance, it's the design. It just looks very disconnected from the rest of the building.
Yeah, it looks like someone stuck an airplane wing on the top of the stadium. My takeaways from the stadium were that the seats are really cheap and thin and plasticky. And for a guy like me who's not tiny, that's
the state-of-the-art seats that they keep touting as being the best thing in any sports arena in the world.
Oh, I was afraid I was going to break it. The section I was in, which was kind of like the cheap seats on the opposite the benches, is very vertical. Like, man, it is a climbing a ladder as you're going up. Now the cool part is that puts you like over the field. So that's a very looming sort of stand, which is very cool, both in terms of sight lines and in terms of an intimidation factor. I love their safe standing on the end zone, primarily because it was absolutely packed. And I've heard a story that you can, if you have a ticket anywhere in the stadium, you can go stand over there if you want because it's general admission. Their fans were phenomenal in that end. Just in general, I really enjoyed the whole experience. They stuck the El Matador and beer garden guys up in the corner, but you could hear them all game. I could anyway. I thought they were tremendous. It was really hot unless the wind was blowing. When the wind was blowing, the gaps worked and I was refreshed and it was fine. When the wind wasn't blowing, I was getting blasted and it was hot and awful.
Yeah, the roof the reason why it's built the way it is to kind of encourage airflow through the stadium. But when the breeze stops, the roof creates a sweat box. I mean, it's just as hot and sweaty in there as it is in Houston. And unfortunately, on this particular night, that was for the majority of the game. And that to me was one of the downsides. The upside is the place is insanely loud, like 100 decibels plus for most of the game. Now I am closer I was sitting right next to the safe standing area, and I'll talk about that in a second. The PA system, the sound system in there is bonkers. There are more speakers just over the safe standing area section alone than there is in the entirety of Toyota Stadium.
Yeah, generally speaking, their production value in the stadium, and this is something that a field that I work in as a periphery, and I work in a little bit, so I pay attention to this kind of thing. It is almost NBA level production value. Lots of cool lights with different colors.
The hype video at the beginning was fantastic.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. The music choices were good. Are they doing anything with the fans? I have no idea. I couldn't tell. Someone told me that they pipe them in. I couldn't tell that they were doing that. It didn't sound like it to me. I'm not really one to get into fan drama. So to me, their fans were plenty loud enough on their own. They didn't need any help. I could still hear the Dallas guys though. So, the acoustics in there bounce like crazy. Everything in there, feels like it's close to the field. There's plenty of concessions. I stood in line behind like 4 people and it took me like 5 minutes to get a drink. So, they got a lot of good things going on there. The aesthetic of all the green everywhere and the green neon and stuff, the design, not big picture, but just aesthetically was all really well done. I mean, I think it's a tremendous stadium. I know it's not, for some reason, people that think it's not that great, but I think it's of an American stadium. soccer specific stadium, I think it's really well done.
Well, it has the unfortunate problem of opening the same year Cincinnati and Columbus opened their new stadiums.
Yeah, it may suffer by comparison. I have not seen those, I admit.
Yeah, I haven't seen them in person either, but just based on their design and the photos and the videos I've seen, just based on photos and videos of all three of them, Austin clearly is the third best of the three. And what's interesting about the Austin Stadium is that it continues with some design elements that have always driven me nuts about Toyota Stadium. So the north end of the stadium has almost an open stage feel to it. It's not a stage. There are seats down towards the field at the field end of it, but it is a big empty area where there's concessions, and then it backs up to the offices or whatever that is at the north end of the stadium. But as you walk around to what is, in Dallas, the club side, the WinStar Club, well, they have their own club. I think it's Lexus is the brand. And to get from one end of the stadium to the other, you've got to walk around the exterior of the club, just like you do in Frisco, to get to the south end of the stadium. Yeah. And it becomes a U, almost like Dallas's stadium is. And I think that's a weird design element. The chairs, you're right, Buzz. The chairs are interesting. There's lots of leg room from front to back. So the gap between, I'm 6'2", so the gap between my knee and the seat in front of me was very comfortable. But Andy even noticed that all the seats are very narrow. So you're shoulder to shoulder, elbow to elbow. You feel a lot closer in those chairs than you do in Frisco. And I don't know what they made these chairs out of, but you're right, Buzz. I'm not as big as you are, but I thought these chairs feel like they could break. If you stood on one, you might snap it in two.
Yeah, thankfully I was on the end of the row, so I didn't have the squeeze in. My relatively tiny wife next to me who gave me lots of room too. So, but when I first sat down on the seat, I was like, "Holy crap, I'm going to break this thing." That was my only real complaint, was that other than the heat. But here's my question for you: do you like it better than Toyota Stadium?
Do I like it better than Toyota Stadium? I can't believe I'm saying this, and maybe it's I like the open air of Toyota Stadium after the sun has gone down. There's something I know that the roof creates an atmosphere that is accentuated by the fact that they've got that amazing supporters group section that is going nonstop for 90 minutes. And there's just something about the open air atmosphere of Toyota Stadium that I personally really like. But I also do many times wonder what Toyota Stadium would be like if it actually had some sort of roof structure on it. So, there are pros and cons to each of them, for sure.
I like it better than Toyota Stadium.
It certainly feels newer and not as dated and aged and worn out as Toyota Stadium. I'm just talking about from a purely use standpoint.
No,
what is it you like more about it?
Well, I didn't like how steep it is to get up to my seat because I'm not fit. But that aside, the way that it looms over the field, I really like how closed in and intimate it feels, and how on top of the game you feel. I like to sit high so I can analyze the game. At Toyota, when I do that, I'm getting further and further away from the field. It's because it's a bowl, it's very tapered going down in there. I like the way this is, hovering. The aesthetics of it, the roof, I get what you're saying about it holding it in, but even the aesthetics of the roof I liked. I like the way the breeze came through better than it does in Toyota. I liked the color and the neon, and I liked the show and the presentation. There's a lot to like. I mean, I don't hate Toyota Stadium by any means, but I definitely think I like this one better.
Well, when you ask me if I like one or the other, I'm just talking from kind of a design, practical use case. What I vastly prefer to Austin than I do Dallas is the game day experience. The game day experience is absolutely cannot miss in Austin. And it starts and ends with that supporters group. And I wrote this on Twitter. I don't care how they created it. I don't care if every single person there is getting paid to do that. That is an amazing scene, and it drives everybody else in the stadium. I can't tell you
Yeah.
how many times the people sitting around me were all talking about how much they loved that. They all knew the songs. They were singing along with the song, not out loud like the supporters groups, but they would just kind of like be singing along with them kind of under their breath as the songs were going on. And to be fair, that section started before the game and did not stop going until after the game was over, even when Pepe and Jesus were just slamming goals in their face. The goal would get scored against them. The supporters groups just continued to go and go and go.
Yeah.
And it really set a tone in the place that when they have a good team and a team that is a contender is going to make that place really special.
Yeah, people around me were singing as well, and that's going to be the key. I have no idea, and this will get into like how they built it, the market, the sustainability, all that kind of stuff. We'll find out. Like, because right now the team is terrible, and if they don't improve the team, will it sustain? If they even if they don't improve the team, if this becomes a not hip thing to do, will it sustain? We have no clue, and it's
right.
We won't know for years whether they've done things right or not. You know, we won't. There's no way to know.
I think what you're hitting on really more than anything is, you know, when we talk about FC Dallas's marketing, it's your biggest marketing asset is the fans, is the atmosphere, it's what makes it an attraction. Whether or not they you know got things started in the right way or not, you know, they were very savvy. They hired a lot of musicians to work with fans and come up with and come up with a couple of songs that aren't the same half a dozen that every single team in the world or in the United States does. You want to create a spectacle, and their issue is, you know, their potential issue is going to be if it doesn't turn into what everybody in Austin seemed to expect, like not a contender to get into the playoffs, but a contender for MLS Cup. Will they be able to keep that up? But it's the polar opposite of FC Dallas, where they're actually investing in that fan experience to say, hey, look, this looks great. You know, having fans cheering and, you know, even, I mean, yeah, just the visual and audible spectacle of it. You know, at FC Dallas, you've got a great passionate supporters group that you stick in a corner that no one can see, and for a couple of years you hired a drum line to drum over them so that people couldn't hear them maybe cuss. So
Yeah.
that you made a laughing stock, which is still brought up to this day. The FC Dallas hired a drum line because the supporters didn't make any noise. It was actually to drum over the noise, but you know, you then create this perception, and then people locally are like, well, why would I want to go there? They don't value their customers.
My biggest takeaway relative to Toyota Stadium now is going to be the stage on the north end.
Yeah,
In Toyota
totally
Stadium.
agree.
Yeah, they've done like a little bit of a presentation with the trucks, and I get all that, and I'm sure there's a long range plan, but like right now, that whole space is a negative space in terms of its usability and its impact on what's happening in the stadium. It's just a dead zone. So
There are some people trying to get that opened up again.
yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen with it, and I hope that the franchise figures out a way to do something with it, because when you compare it to what we just witnessed, you and I, Peter, which was a 360, even on the end, it doesn't have a lot of stuff. It still has stuff. It still has colors, and it has some bleachers, and it has some, you know, things, you know, compare that to Toyota, where you just have this, it doesn't do anything. So it's like that. There's a lot to be taken away from. I mean, listen, you can learn from every team in the league. Like in any way you want to. Columbus dropped their academy teams this week with the list of the academy team that the players all came from. So every time you turn around, there's something in MLS you can learn from to make yourself better. And this is another one of those things. I really hope that people from FC Dallas are looking at what's going on in Austin and trying to learn from it. Even though it's not what you do, you know, you can still learn from it.
Well, you know what? And I'm even going to say I hope the people in Houston learn from it, because I really am tired of Texas being the laughingstock of our league when it comes to attendance issues and fan experiences. I mean, in many ways, I'm thankful Austin has been able to pull off what they've pulled off. Set aside all the other parts about how they got the team and all that junk. I am glad to see that a city in Texas has been able to put together an entertaining atmosphere, because it is without. I mean, the biggest takeaway is the percentage of people in that stadium go back because it is a fantastic. You must not miss it. Night out on the town, and it's really, really quite good.
Yeah, my wife asked me if it was like Portland, and I said, "Well, it's not that good."
No, it's not Portland. No.
But
let's not go that far.
Yeah, it's close enough to drive, and so listen, I know there's lots of FC Dallas fans that hate it, but I'm just suggesting that it is if you like soccer, you can go there and enjoy a game there and experience it. I think it's worth going and experiencing, even if it's not against FC Dallas. It's close enough that it's like, man, I'm going to go check that out. It's worth seeing if you're into the soccer.
Yeah, I got I wrote a big, long Twitter thread about my experience, and I got a few pushbacks from people that want to call the whole experience plastic or made up or short-lived or whatever. And I'm just telling you, I was there, and all those people completely looked 1,000% into it and were loving their team.
If it's fake, it's entertaining as hell fake. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
And and if you really have that attitude about that situation, I just would encourage you to step back and take an accounting of what you really want for this sport, because that is the atmosphere that is going to grow this game in this country, not what's going on in Frisco and in downtown Houston.
Yeah.
And that to me is way more important than how it was created at this point, because we're trying to grow a game. We're not, I think we're getting bogged down into the nuances of these things. And I gotta say, it was fantastic. So kudos to
they even
to
had a
Austin.
couple of cheers that I've not heard before, which is like, a lot of American supporters groups, and I love them all. Don't get me wrong, but you hear the same chants a lot of places, probably because of American Outlaws permeating all those groups or whatever. And they borrow a lot of them from Europe. I get all that, but they had 3 or 4 chants that I've never heard. And I thought that was terrific. I mean, the all right one has too many all rights in it, and that bothered me the whole time that there are 4 instead of 3. But at least they're trying.
Yeah, the other thing, there's 2 technical things I'll bring up. One, their non-registration required totally free Wi-Fi kicked ass. I was getting about 30 meg up and down, and it worked perfectly without issue. The second kick-ass thing about the stadium is their stands for digital ticket taking. So they have these white stands, and it's almost like going to the airport. You just show you run your phone with your QR code, and you check in. Nobody has to look at your phone or anything like that. It worked great and fast. So those were the 2 cool technologies that I know.
Well, this one's for the ladies. If you go, check the bag rules, because they have different bag rules than FC Dallas does, because my wife had to. They also have convenient
She had
lockers.
the clear bag, and they wouldn't let her in.
Right, because it was too big. It wasn't fitting in their rules, which are different. So that's why I'm saying is, like, if you're going to go, make sure you double check the bag rules. Now, they have a very convenient bank of lockers there that you can check in and out on your phone. So you don't have to touch anything, don't have to deal with anybody. I mean, it was $10, but whatever. It's right there. So you don't have to go back to your car, which in our case would have been a 20-minute walk back to the hotel. So at least they have that. But, if you're going to take your lady, double check those bag rules before you go.
Good pro tip from Buzz Carrick to you, the Third Degree listener. So if you thought about doing it, you should go get a ticket and go see a game in Austin, whether Dallas is there or not. Maybe you'll get lucky and see what it's like to attend a game there when the home team wins.
They don't win a lot of games at home.
I said maybe, right? I said maybe. All right, Dan, anything you want to throw in there, since this is all supporters group stuff that I know you care about so much?
No. I mean, it's great to see a good showing from the Dallas supporters. Picked up really well on the broadcast, especially in those in that 20 minutes where a lot of people in green went fairly quiet.
Dude, those dudes were awesome. You could hear them the whole game.
Yeah. We couldn't hear it. Now, I was literally in the total opposite corner from them. We could see them, but we couldn't hear them, unfortunately.
I was on the same side at the other end, and I could hear them the whole time.
Yeah, that's good.
They were great.
They were great.
Yeah.
They looked like they were having a blast too, and all of the smack that was being run out in the parking lot as they were kind of in a group. All the El Matador people were all in a group at a street corner, and people were giving them crap, and they were giving it right back. So that was cool.
It looked like they were thoroughly enjoying themselves on the march out when they were having won the game. That seemed to be a high point for a lot of them.
Yes, kudos to them for making the trip and showing up and making all the noise. That was I was really proud. I was proud of the whole thing. I made the tactical error of forgetting where I was when Pepe scored that first goal at the top from the top of the box, because I stood up and gave a big old Tiger Woods fist pump and then loud clapping for about 5 seconds, and everybody just stopped and stared at me.
Yeah, I stood
and
up
Andy was like, "Peter, sit down. What are you doing? You're going to get us killed."
Yeah, I was wearing a jersey.
So shut up, hipsters! I'm going to spit in your pumpkin spice latte.
I was wearing a jersey, and I stood up and clapped. And I looked around. I realized I was the only one for like 50 rows around me standing up. So I was like, but I stuck with it.
Good stuff. Well, thanks to the people of Austin for hosting us while we kicked their ass. That was very hospitable of them.
Oh, it was a fun game.
It was. All right. Anything else, fellas?
No, not really. I'd like to double down on the idea. I know no one from the club listens to this thing, but right now they're playing a bunch of the young guys. And again, how many years have we been saying this? If they're old enough, when they're good enough, right? Soccer's a young man's game. These guys that they're playing that are in their low 20s and high teens are plenty old enough because they are plenty good enough. And you got one or two veteran leaders in there. Hollingshead's in there. Hedges is in there. Maurer usually is in there. Facco when he's in the midfield. That's plenty of leadership. Play these young guys, man. Stick with this. Compared to the first half of the season when this team was utter trash, right now it's enjoyable to watch. Yeah. And this is the way forward. Find out for sure whether these guys are going to keep them or not. Build around this team as long as you can. We have lots of ideas about how they can go forward in the offseason when we get there. In the meantime, if you've given up on FC Dallas, you come give them another shot, because this team, as it's playing right now, is a lot of fun to watch.
Well said, Buzz Carrick. Third Degree, the podcast, is brought to you by Soccer 90. Now, Soccer 90, again, is your source for FC Dallas national team and international club gear, but especially in this moment, they have the new Dallas Tornado tee. It's a beautiful blue. It's exclusive. They also have the FC Dallas version of the Kick Childhood Cancer pregame top on sale, and the much beloved and highly coveted Nicosi tee that has the smiley face on it from the social media campaign. And if you are a third degree listener, so you're going to get 25% off your order, with the exception of the Nicosi tee, because obviously that is a charity issue. But just use the code when you order at your checkout at soccer90.com. All right. Well, hey, Buzz, I hope you don't mind me promoting the fact we're going to be recording some podcasts for the kick around after each of the 3 U.S. men's national team games. And I think you're going to join us on the Sunday or Wednesday game, right?
I believe I'm going to do Sunday with you guys.
Yeah. So hopefully everybody get a chance to check that out over thekickaround.com. Dan, thank you very much. It's good to speak to you again, sir.
You too. I'm glad you made it back down up I-35 without becoming vegan or something weird.
And with 4 tires with air in it. I'm thankful for that.
Good job.
And Buzz, again, thank you to you and your lovely bride, Amy, for being our rescuers, our heroes, our knights in shining armor. We really do appreciate that, man.
Oh, you're welcome.
And thank you, FC Dallas Curious fan. We will speak to you next week on another edition of Third Degree, the podcast.
Austin is raw.
Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast. Third Degree, the Third Degree Net Podcast.